Okay, so we're here on page number 6, up here where I have this little sticky note there. Um, so it says that you could say this is which is very poetic text, but you cannot detect any system of structure or uh, uh, once you know the Kitzvah Ari, the way system of structure, once you know Kitzvah Ari, the entire Zohar becomes open book. For example, you could study the qualities of metal and see that gold, silver is white, gold is yellow, copper is red. Certain things are harder, others softer. You will not understand the reason for any of those things until you know atomic theory and solid state part physics. Once you have learned those disciplines, you know exactly how light is reflected with certain atoms of copper and understand why copper is red. It all makes sense, it becomes part of the system. Ari's teaching could be called the atomic theory of the Zohar. Everything begins to make sense. One can go deeper and deeper as far as human mind can delve, and it will always yield new treasures. Okay, the problem is that it makes it extremely, extremely difficult. The main word Kisvei Ari is the Eitz Chaim, tree of life. This word expounds the theoretical foundation of Kabbalah. But as master the contents of this work, the rest is essentially revealed. And the pre-Eitz Chaim shows you how to apply the various readings of the teaching of the Eitz Chaim to all kinds of daily situations. Meditate, and this is going to be important coming up in a couple of paragraphs. Meditation when you put on sits in the film, when you pray, when you eat matzah. Also shows you how to develop meditative techniques developed on Rabbi's teaching. Then comes up with works known as Shemona Shalim. The first gate, Shar Gdamas, covers the same theoretical ground as Eitz Chaim. The second is Shar Ma'amor Rashbi. The gates are teachings. The third is the Shar Marim Chazal. The Talmud teachings. The fourth is Shar Psukim. The gate biblical verses. The fifth is Shar Mitzvos. The gate commandments. Sixth is Shar HaKavanos. The gate meditations. The seventh is Shar Ruach HaKodesh. The gate divine inspiration, which is a general recapitulation and describes how that we use our system as meditative discipline. Many ways, Shara Ruach Kodesh is key to the entire Kisari because all the previous gates deal with theory, while Shara Kodesh teaches how to put this in, teaches how to put this into practice. The eighth gate is Shara Gagula, the gate of reincarnations. Okay, that is all background material. An important point, which is often lost, is that Kabbalah cannot stand by itself without the entire corpus of the revealed Torah. It's an integral part of the Torah. It is not a single Kabbalist work. It does not contain quotations of the Bible, the Talmud, the Medrash, and requires profound knowledge of all these. Bible, Talmud, Medrash, and Kabbalah all work together. This is 100% true. All parts of Torah interact with each other. Kabbalah is no different than any other part of Torah. So therefore, if you don't know the references, the Chumash and Tanakh and the Shas and Midrashim, so you're going. The more you're lacking the cross references, the more you'll understand. Less you'll understand what's going on. Okay, now comes a very important point. There are 3 types of Kabbalah: theoretical Kabbalah, meditative Kabbalah, and practical Kabbalah. The theoretical Kabbalah essentially gives a description of spiritual realm. That's, I think, 99% of people learn Kabbalah like that. I don't know if 99%, perhaps it's slightly exaggerated, but a high percentage. Most people learn Kabbalah want to know the theoretical way of how the universe works. It's rewarding to know what's behind the scenes, and especially because it explains things. I don't think you can fully understand the first Baruch Esrei unless you know the theoretical Kabbalah. Otherwise, you have no idea what Godel Kibar Venora are. Oh, unless you don't understand what Ibar and Nora are. So therefore, there are many things where theoretical Kabbalah becomes very useful, very important, and helps us very much. Okay. That's the meditative Kabbalah. The next aspect of Kabbalah tells how to get into inner space. Now, that's something which obviously Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan wrote the book called Inner Space, and called Inner Space for that reason. And this already is something which most people don't do, including myself, which is to the meditative Kabbalah, which is to use Kabbalah in order to enter some different state of consciousness where one actually is experiencing higher levels of what is either on a more specific, more lower level play meditation, or according to the Mekubalim and the Hasidim, connecting with one's inner neshama. So there are there are two aspects to the meditative, which is, again, I'm repeating myself. You can meditate like any other meditation, which puts you into a different state of consciousness, perhaps, but it's a kind of a trance. And the other state, which is higher than a trance, is meditating yourself into higher worlds. And that is something which, again, the Hasidim, the Mekubalim believe in. I don't know how many people actually reach it. Remember, it's only about a very small minority of people actually learn Kabbalah. And of those people, I think even that very tiny minority, most people can enter perhaps into a trance, which they visualize, use imagery, are able to calm their minds and transport themselves internally to a different state. Again, a trance is the right word for it. The higher level, which is also a trance, is to go into a cholos and to go into Lama Soyanim and to connect with Malachim. And there are people who are able to do that. So I'm going to tell you something. Let's see if I can find this in my desk quickly. This is something somebody told me wants to get. A pendulum. And they told me exactly how to use a pendulum in order to speak to your spiritual guides, in order to get answers from things which go on in the Lama Yonim. And I tried it a few times. And it was fascinating. And perhaps I really did get answers from Lama Yonim. I have no reason to doubt it. But I didn't feel any spiritual uplift from it. I didn't feel that was putting me on a different plane of existence. I felt that perhaps there was emes to it, but I didn't feel now much more spiritual. So it was a very interesting experience, and I stopped. It was not appealing to me. I thought finally I'd have a way to get around my, my ADD or whatever it is, and get into some spiritual connection, and it didn't really work. So, in that, to me, it seems that there are different people who are able to get different things meditatively out of Kabbalah, and perhaps even without, not perhaps without Kabbalah as well. But I think even if you're getting something out of it, the question is whether you're actually becoming more spiritual as a result, and it's not necessarily the case. And even if you get, let's say you get answers from higher places. For me, it was disappointing. Okay, that's I'm not saying somebody else I'm not saying somebody else shouldn't try it. Maybe they'll get special uplift from it. But like I said, it wasn't I was looking for. Remind me of the time that the one time in my life I went to a Makubal and started trying to speak to him in Kabbalah, and I was extremely disappointed. First of all, I wasn't sure he knew Kabbalah. Yeah, and Makubal today doesn't mean somebody who has necessarily knows Kabbalah. It means somebody who has some type of ESP. And also, it didn't. I didn't feel a spiritual uplift from it. So there are when Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan talks about this, the meditative Kabbalah that he's interested in you accomplishing, and maybe by the time we get to later stages of inner space, we'll have some connection to it. He's talking not just about contacting higher forces or getting answers from higher forces, but rather actually experiencing a spiritual uplift from it. Okay, so the
Rabbi, can you? What does that mean? Like, what are the indications of that?
Well, anybody who's I don't think I think the only the only frame of reference we have for that is sometimes by the two frames of reference, Purim and Yom Kippur. In other words, sometimes people feel on Purim when they get slightly tipsy, and not too tipsy because then you lose everything. And on Yom Kippur, when you by Ne'ilah, ideally speaking, it should happen earlier, but I think for a lot of people, it happens by Ne'ilah. You feel that you're connected to something higher than your existence in this world. So those are the two tangible frames of reference. I think that for most people, So they can just say, okay, there are times that I felt a sense of being uplifted spiritually, which I don't normally feel. Now, there are people, a lot of people, not including myself, who probably feel that when they get very deep into a nigun, very deep into a profound musical trance. I don't have that experience. I would think, Nora, I would ask you directly, if you don't mind, whether, since you're an artist, whether you feel that there are times when you experience that in when you're engaged in art.
Yeah. I mean, I can get real hippy dippy with you, but I want to play devil's advocate for a second. For the sake of others, for my sake, Adam Perry actually we used to go back and forth. I'd get hippy dippy, and he'd put me in my place. So he's here, so I'm speaking on his behalf as well. And I want to know, how about for drugs? People can say I smoke marijuana and I get spiritual. How do we keep them in check? How do we
It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible, and I don't know how one distinguishes between what's real and what's not. I think there are people who certainly use mushrooms and other substances and then believe that they get into higher realms. And I don't know, especially because we have the whole idea in Hasidus of fake it till you make it, which means, so what if it's not real? What do you care? You're experiencing it, it uplifts you, it's good. So I think Baal Musar would say that if it's not real, it's not worth it. I'm not sure. I would ask you again, put you on the spot, right? When you feel when you would go to Uman, is it real or is it not real?
Yeah, certain things are real, but I would even just what I
How
do
would
is
you distinguish? How would you
well, I would
distinguish?
I would bracket the word spirituality. I bracket the word art. I bracket the word love. I bracket the word racism. The words that have they seem to have a lot of meaning, but nobody clearly defines them. If you bracket the word spirituality for a moment and use other words, what is it we're talking about? And I guess in a nutshell, for certainly those things are important. You get an uplift. I would say that spirituality is the idea that you can move beyond matter. That has a transcendental quality. And I would say that human beings setting goals itself has a spiritual nature to it, that I'm going beyond what's present in front of me now. So if you have experiences that help you with a vision to move forward with higher goals, I would say that those have a spiritual component, if we are going to use the word. But it's a good exercise also to bracket the word for a second and say, well, let's use other words. What are we trying to point at?
Right. So I think that's why the word we have to define what kind of trance a person is in order to find it spiritual. In other words, when a person, it's commonly understood when a person is driving, a person is in a trance. Right. A person doesn't realize very often that they're driving. They've gotten from point A to point B until they get to point B. Right. That takes place almost automatically. A person could be thinking many other thoughts and driving relatively safely at the same time. Although some people there's a sakana. So there are when a person is daydreaming, a person is in a trance. When what Rabbi Kaplan wants to person to accomplish is to feel actually connected, and I don't know how you know it's real and don't know it's real. Presumably later in the book when we get there, and I haven't read the full book in many years, he'll give more exercises, but that there is a way of getting into a meditative trance where you know that it's holy, not just stop meditation, because you can meditate to lose weight too. B, that it's something where you're tapped into something higher which comes from outside yourself. Obviously, there are people who have revelations of Eliyahu Navi, and they know clearly they're talking to Eliyahu Navi, but we don't have those kinds of revelations. So for us, it's a very gray area. It's not hard to tell. So, but that is the idea of meditative Kabbalah. So I want to go a little bit further here. Meditative Kabbalah tells us how to get this inner space. Very often, theoretical Kabbalah is an important guide once you are in there. Otherwise, like taking off the plane, you need maps and a chart to make sure you'll be able to land. The theoretical Kabbalah gives you the landmarks. In other words, which world you are in, whether on the side of good or evil, etc. So obviously, the theoretical world, just like a map, is not the same thing as being in the place. It's just representative. So theoretical Kabbalah, from the perspective of meditative Kabbalah, is just representative. It's symbolic. It's not the actual thing. And then you have to get into trance itself. And there are very few books published on meditative Kabbalah, although there are many manuscripts, which is one of the things Rabbi Kaplan tried to change with his series on meditation. paradigm is this Shari Kedusha case of Holiness written by Rabbi Chaim Vital. So the few published books that tell you how to meditate Kabbalistically. Until recently, only the first three sections were published. Fourth section consisting of a collection of manuscripts. Uh, Fourth section consists of a collection of manuscripts of all different meditative methods. That being said, there are a lot of books, right, which like the Siddur HaRashash, which tell you contemplative techniques, which I think we have to also although it's a form of meditation, and Rabbi Kaplan speaks about this, the machine. There's different types of meditation. The Mekubalim who they daven out of the Siddur HaRashash, right? They contemplate Shemos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I assume that somehow this puts them into some altered state as well. I don't know. But if you look at the Siddur itself, all these types of works, they are very complicated systems of the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and other symbolic combinations of letters, words, which are you contemplate in order to get into a, ideally speaking, to a higher state. But I don't know how many people get there. And in any Sfard Siddur, not Nusach Sfard, any Eidotam Mizrach Siddur, you'll find Shiluv. You'll find the Shem of Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, connected to the Aleph Dal Nun Yud, with a bunch of extra letters, and the person supposed to davening out of that kind of siddur, supposed to contemplate that name and look at it and be have some significant interaction with the shame in a way which makes them spiritually uplifted or more connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in some indirect or indirect way. I don't know how it works. I don't know if it does work. Probably for some people it does, probably for some people it doesn't. But in any event, there's their contemplation, which is to look at something, and then come to some realization, which is intellectual, spiritual. And I think the meditative Kabbalah looks for the spiritual realization. And then there's closing your eyes and trying, as he will depict later in the book, trying to depict various different places where you would be as a result of your meditation. And the higher forms, that would be forms of Ruach HaKodesh. So, but like he says, there are very few books and very few people actually, even the Mekubalim went into contemplation. They weren't necessarily into abstract meditation. That's a different level. There are people. I heard many years ago that Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, the Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael, he held that Rabbi Kaplan was wrong about all this. The Rabbi Kaplan, that meditation is not really an authentic Jewish tradition. Meditation is something which Rabbi Kaplan imported from Eastern religions and brought into Judaism. I think it's a very radical position to take, but there are people who do take that position. Clearly, Rabbi Kaplan is of the opinion that that's not the case, that the meditative Kabbalah is intrinsic to Judaism. And again, there are many texts in Judaism which seem to indicate the very fact that you could have a prophetic experience, talk to Eliyahu Navi, talk to Malachim, talk to, as Baal Shem Tov, as we mentioned, spoke to Mashiach, seems to indicate that meditative tradition is part and parcel of Judaism. It's not some transplant from somewhere else. Okay, the third type of is practical or magical Kabbalah. Here too, there are almost no books in print except for Aziel HaMalach, the angel of divine mysteries, was divided into three sections. I love this paragraph. The first printer dropped the manuscript, however, and printed it in shuffled order. Typesetter found no errors because it's not expected to understand the text. The main work of magic is Shoshani Yisod Olam, the rose foundation world of which one manuscript exists. Now, I would say that there are manuscripts or perhaps, and I think even books published on things like palmistry, how to read a palm, right, and how to tell people's life story from a palm. I would put that into the category of practical Kabbalah as well, even though you're not creating a golem or anything like that. But I think that also is a form of practical Kabbalah because you're actually applying it not just to understanding how the world works, not that just to transporting yourself in a certain form of trance, but actually to derive some foretelling of the future or understanding of what you should be doing based on Kabbalah. And I think that when the primary concern of the people who opposed the Kabbalah, and the people who said, you should learn Kabbalah until you're 40, until you finish, fill yourself with Shasu Poiskim. I think they were concerned with people being attracted to this third type of Kabbalah. I don't think the theoretical part of Kabbalah it bothers them so much. I don't think even the meditative part of Kabbalah bothers them so much. I think they're afraid of people then performing magic tricks, and then the word tricks is perhaps a bit too pejorative, but performing magic and coming convincing people of their being like Shabtai Tzvi Mashiach or some other type of holy person, whereas in fact they were not. And we know that Kosh Baruch Hu warns us in the Torah about a Navi Sheker who's going to be able to perform osos, who will be able to perform miraculous deeds. And they were afraid that this would actually come to pass, and that people would use it. And even a person didn't perform actual magic, but used the Kabbalah to convince other people that he was a holy person, that in of itself, it's not necessarily directly practical magic Kabbalah, but again, getting into reading palms and stuff like that. The Mekubalim will go around and read your ksuva or read your mezuzah and tell you what's wrong in your life based on that. I think all of those things, they're very leery of people being impressed by that and coming to believe in people as opposed to believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Be a problem with Tam Tim Hashem Lokecha, and a problem of being drawn after people who might not be the best people for us to want people to follow. Okay, so again, I think the main issue which provoked opposition to Kabbalah was this assumption that was this area of applying Kabbalah beyond theory, beyond meditation, to actual tangible phenomena in this world, either in a magical way or a mystical way, which entails foretelling the future and so on and so forth. So even Rabbi Kaplan, in his article about horoscopes, he says very careful to say that even though he does believe in horoscopes, you can never act based on a horoscope. You can only say, okay, this is my character based on my horoscope, and maybe I can fix my character knowing what my character is. So that's idea being that Tamim Tiyam Hashem Lokecha tells you stay away from planning, charting your life based on Kabbalah. Use it for those first two purposes. Okay, I hope that's clear. Let's go on to the next part here, where he gets actually into more tangible Kabbalistic issues. The spiritual dimension.
I want to tell you one thing, Rabbi. I know it's going to spook everyone out, but it's not. I wouldn't call it Ruach HaKodesh, but you mentioned astrology. I have no idea how I do it, but in many times in my life, I've guessed people's birthday, the exact day. I'll ask them. I have a premonition, and sometimes I'm a day off. I did it to my wife. We were dating. I said, "Is your birthday April 12th?" And she said, "Yes." How'd you know that? And I said, "I don't know." And I've done it many times, but I've been wrong. But still, to get it right as many times as I have out of 365 days.
Yes, I know quite a few people. Actually, I know quite a few people. I know one or two people, I should say, were able to do it, and I think that that's very impressive. And I have a very open mind towards it, and I think that there might be legitimacy to it. What's interesting for me personally is evidently there's an issue like people in me who are born in Adar Rishon. My birthday is on Monday, Yud Adar, but I was born Adar Rishon. And then, so Adar Rishon, Adar is really Pisces. And, by the secular date, I was born February 14th, I'm Aquarius. So I don't know what people like you do with people like me. Do you go? Because I was told, and I have no idea, that no, once you're born in Adar, you're Pisces, even though you were born according to the secular date in Aquarius. So, right. How does that work with you?
Well, I don't know much about astrology at all. I don't know anything, actually. My mother is very into it. I just, with the birth dates, I just have a premonition, and I turn and I say, I don't know. I just feel it. I mean, it sounds weird. I think it's funny because it's totally wacky. And I just laugh at it. My wife laughs at it. I've been at Shabbos tables, and not for fun, but I won't say to all the people there. I'll turn to someone and I'll say, is your birthday October 11th? He goes, no, October 10th. How do you know? I go, I don't know. And I don't know. That's all. I just wanted to share that.
It's very cool. So the only thing is,
even if it's spirituality, it doesn't bring anything. There's no great thing from it.
Right, I think
Just
it's like the pendulum. It doesn't it might be a legitimate koyach, probably is, but I'm not sure what we get out of it. And certainly a person should not, like somebody recently said, well, this horoscope is very very similar to my to this person and to that person, but it's not 100%. So the moment it's not 100%, the question is how much is real and how much is made up. But again, it's according to Rabbi Kaplan, yes, there are such people like yourself, and it's real that you can actually intuit a person's personality and from a person's personality or whatever sense you get from them what their birthday is. 100%. Okay. All right. So the spiritual dimension. One of the most important foundations of our faith is that belief that God is an absolute unity in every possible respect. We see God as a simple unity. Simple doesn't mean uncomplicated. It means without parts. They're absolutely simple and absolutely one. There's no element of form, structure, or plurality in him whatsoever. So there's absolute unity means, I saw years ago that Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg in the book Fundamentals in Faith, he says one of the reasons why we're required to believe in God as absolute unity is because since human beings are paradoxical, we are intrinsically paradoxical and not unified internally. So that's why you can take a human being and play off one trait of his against another trait of his. Most basic being, I can flatter you, right? And even though normally you're a tremendously honest person, but your pleasure of being flattered will impinge on your honesty. So we're complicated and we have paradoxical tendencies. So therefore, you can play one aspect of us against another. So we're not to understand God's absolute unity. We would try and play with God the same way. So we're supposed to understand there is no such paradoxical aspect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But that leads obviously a question because the world is tremendously complicated and complex. So what's the interface between the absolute unity of Hashem and the extraordinary complexity of this world? And that's what he's about to say. But this brings us to brings up a tricky question. Well, how does God, who is absolutely simple, interact with the different aspects or parts of creation? How does the one interact with many? And in the footnotes in the back, he says that this actually is, of course, the Ramchal's question. While we are pondering this question, and before we attempt to answer, we are led to even more perplexing one. According to the Kabbalists, God's simple essence is so powerful that it must be hidden if creation to exist at all. If, on the other hand, God were to withdraw himself completely, creation would utterly cease to exist. We have thus a paradoxical situation where the very existence of anything God himself becomes extremely tenuous. The question, therefore, is no longer how can one interact with many, but how can many exist? This, of course, is the entire question for which the answer is Tzimtzum. So, for some reason, Rabbi Kaplan does not jump immediately to Tzimtzum. Says Kabbalists answer the question in the previous question by explaining that God created a spiritual dimension. This is the first aspect of Tzimtzum, of course, that the spiritual dimension, which is the interface. This dimension is made of every basic concept needed to create and sustain the universe. It's either Adam Kadmon or Atzilus, and obviously something which we're going to have to explain later on. Essentially, through the spiritual domain, God interacts with the universe. It thus forms the bridge between God and creation, acts as a step-down mechanism which prevents creation from being overwhelmed by God's essence while still being infused by it. So I believe that Lahavdil, the Greeks were also bothered by this question, the Greeks who were monotheists. How does God interact with the universe? And they came up with this concept called the logos, which is the interaction, the interacting aspect of God. But I don't think they ever got anywhere near as detailed in their examination of this as the Mekubalim did. Because obviously in Kabbalah, the idea of God's relationship to the world is extremely, extremely complicated. So according to many Kabbalists, it is this spiritual dimension that makes it possible for us to speak about God's multifaceted relationship to the universe without violating the basic principle of his unity and his simplicity. So that's true. In other words, all of Kabbalah is the marshal for that interface. All Kabbalah stipulates we don't know anything and can't speak about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Achdus Pshuta. We can only speak about how he interacts with us. So everything we say about in Kabbalah is all not about Hashem, but about how his interaction with us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu did this chesed with us. They said, of course you can't understand me, and don't even try, and it's forbidden to try because it's beyond the capacity of any entity, not just human beings, even Malachim. So Malachim say, I am Mokom Kavaydoi. But I'm going to make an interface which is extremely, extremely detailed and extremely, extremely well organized, so you can understand my interaction with you. Okay, so this is for according to Kabbalah, any actual state of being that we might ascribe to God, for something God created in order to interact with the universe, not God Himself. And in the back, he says, I'm not going to leave there because we're going to get cut off any second. So I'm just going to say quickly, the footnote on the back, he says, I understand God's relationship to the world is thus twofold. Namely, that He's both transcendental, means He's beyond this world, and immanent, present within the world. He encompasses all the creation, that's Sovev Kol Almin, and He fills it as Memali Kol Almin. This reality is only, however, is only due to our imperfect understanding of God, since He Himself is the most absolute unity. So that in and of itself, Memali Kol Almin and Sovev Kol Almin is an inaccuracy. It's just a marshal, because we can't understand God, so we understand, okay, He acts to us in these two ways. But again, these are things which he's going to have to get into in much greater detail later in the book. So that's in the meantime, we have to know anything we say about Kosh Baruch Hu. Maharal says, even the highest name we give to Kosh Baruch Hu, all those names have to do with relationship. There's no, we don't say anything about God Himself. Thus, without some knowledge of how this dimension is structured, knowledge theoretical Kabbalah, a person cannot really know how God interacts with us. Additionally, we shall see the knowledge of the spiritual dimension provides us with a key to the entire prophetic tradition, beginning with the Bible itself and culminating the most abstract Kabbalistic ideas. And again, as I said, it's very hard to daven without some basic knowledge of Kabbalah. Let's see if we can finish the chapter before I get cut off. If we were to imagine the spiritual domain, therefore, could be described as an infinitely huge spiritual computer. This computer is programmed to fulfill God's one ultimate purpose of bestowing good upon creation. The purpose of creation on the most basic level. The main difference between the spiritual domain and a computer is that the components of the former consist of intelligent, sensitive spiritual beings, which are malachim and other neshamos, I should say. Malachim and the neshamos of human beings. It's the main point of the theoretical Kabbalah is to resolve the paradox of God's interaction with creation, deals almost exclusively with the structure and the dynamics of this domain. And that's, of course, the Kabbalah is called Discussion of Malachim, because Malachim were created by Kodesh Baruch Hu in order to, so to speak, be that spiritual computer which people should be able to understand in the interaction with the world. Okay, so imagine we reach the end of the chapter. We'll stop here for tonight. And Mir Hashem, next week is Purim, so I don't think we're going to be able to learn next Thursday night. I'll pick up in 2 weeks. Have a good night, Rabbi, and a good Shabbos. Thank you very much.
Have a great Shabbos.